prepare themselves for those moments. But it's fair to say I happen to be, though, the Prime Minister of a particularly peaceful nation, an inclusive nation, a place where 200 ethnicities and 160 languages are spoken. We pride ourselves on being well known as a welcoming place. In fact, the terrorist who brought this act to New Zealand chose us for this terrorist act because we are all of those things. And so shock was of course my immediate reaction. That how could this happen here to us and to this community?
I mean, you're pushing for tighter gun controls and
Yes.
you want to do it as fast as possible.
Yes.
Where are the gaps? What are the loopholes that need to be plugged to prevent this kind of thing happening?
One is very obvious, and that is the availability of military-style semi-automatic weapons in New Zealand. And yes, we have gun use for legitimate purposes, particularly in our rural community, but my view is that they will absolutely support us in tackling the availability of weapons that are very obviously designed to take lives.
Is the debate on immigration and migration here perhaps fostering an atmosphere where those abhorrent ideas can flourish? We know that your own party, the Labour Party, wants curbs on immigration.
I would push. I'm going to stop you there for a moment.
Okay, well, continue.
Our announcements that we've made since that we've been in office, probably the most notable of which has been our increase in the refugee quota and accepting in those who need to seek refuge, particularly in the wake of conflicts that are leaving people without safety of a permanent home. We are a welcoming country. We have seen elements of our system where there have been exploitation against migrants who have come here, and including in our education system. And yes, we have sought to weed that out, but I utterly reject the idea that in any way, in trying to ensure that we have a system that looks after those who choose to call New Zealand home, that we have perpetuated an environment where this kind of ideology can exist. I utterly reject it.
I'm talking about the suggestion that there has been a burden on the social services in this country, on housing, as a result of immigration. As a result, your party has called for cuts in immigration. You're in coalition with the New Zealand First Party, where the leader has made it clear that for him, immigration is about ethnicity and race. What I'm saying is the rhetoric at a political level in this country could be seen to be fostering, in the minds of some, potentially a minority, but in the minds of some, the kinds of views that can lead to something terrible.
And again, as I say, one of the most recent and most significant, probably the most significant announcement that we have made in office since we have been a government in the space of immigration has been an increase in the number of refugees that we welcome into New Zealand. I make that point because I utterly disagree with the proposition you're putting to me, and all I can ask is that you actually ask New Zealanders whether or not you think that's a political environment here.
Well, I mean, I have been talking to obviously a lot of Muslim families since I've been here, and one family, one member did say to me that they do feel a chill in the air, that there is a rising level of fear, and he was saying specifically among the women within his family, as a result of what's happened. Is that something that must concern you?
Oh, absolutely. I want everyone who calls New Zealand home, who has made New Zealand their home, whatever their ethnicity or faith, to feel safe. I feel that particularly acutely when it comes to women and children. You know, when I visited the mosque in Wellington, a child yelled out to me as I was walking away, "Prime Minister, are we safe now?" That is my job, is to ensure the safety of those from all walks of life who call New Zealand home, and it is their home. And that is now my role in the coming days, months, weeks, years, however I'm in the privilege of this office, is to ensure that they feel safe and secure and they know this is their home.
The vast majority of Muslims that we spoke to agree with that.
Yes.
No question.
Yes. But I absolutely accept, undoubtedly, in the wake of something so horrific, such a blatant targeting of one community, undoubtedly that has created that sentiment, that feeling of a lack of security. I'm of course pleased that our police have responded and are present during the hours of worship for our mosques, and they will maintain that presence for some time. But my job is to continue to rebuild their faith in that safety, and that's a job for all New Zealanders, to provide that sense of security, and that includes confronting any racism wherever it may exist.
How concerned are you of a rising tide of white nationalism in New Zealand? How bad is that situation getting, do you think?
My call would be a global one. I'm very clear here to make the distinction that yes, this was an Australian citizen, but that is not to say that we do not have ideology in New Zealand that would be an affront to the majority of New Zealanders, that would be utterly rejected by the majority, the vast majority of New Zealanders. But we still have a responsibility to weed it out where it exists and make sure that we never create an environment where it can flourish. But I would make that a global call. What New Zealand experienced here was violence brought against us by someone who grew up and learnt their ideology somewhere else. So actually, if we want to make sure that globally we are a safe and tolerant and inclusive world, we cannot think about this in terms of boundaries. And that's the kind of leadership I think we need to see on this issue.
How do you bring this community back together?
I would first acknowledge that actually that this was a community that was, by and large, it was already together. My job is to ensure it's not shattered apart.
And you're convinced you can succeed in that?
Absolutely, because that's what New Zealand is.
Okay. Prime Minister, thank you.
Thank you.